Welcome to HealingYourself.Life. I'm Dunagun Kaiser.
And I'm Melody Kaiser.
And we're here with you to explore all kinds of ways that you can do a better job of taking care of yourself for your betterment of your own health and that of your family. We have a very special guest today. He is Dr. David Seaman. We're going to speak with him about his new book for the general public entitled The DeFlame Diet. Dr. Seaman, welcome to HealingYourself.Life.
Thanks for having me.
Your book, as you mentioned, is to us in our learning more about you, is based on 4 scientific articles you wrote about barriers to effective weight management, pain syndrome classification, diet induction of inflammation and pain expression, all in the context of pro-inflammatory state created by excess body fat. And you've written these articles, and they've been referenced by researchers from the Harvard Medical School and many other universities in the U.S., as well as in Canada, Brazil, Iran, India, Russia, Japan, Thailand, China, Australia, and several countries in Europe. And a lot of people have heard about inflammation, but don't know that they can actually do anything about it, maybe without taking dangerous drugs that have side effects. Mm-hmm. We've certainly heard a lot about non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, NSAIDs, and we can talk about that maybe a little bit later, but hopefully we can get into with you earlier just the real basics of what inflammation is, where it comes from, why your body would do it in the first place, and what its purpose is, and then what its effects are, and then what are some real natural things that we can do, such as in your DeFlame diet. Did you hold up the book?
Oh,
I wasn't paying attention.
No, I didn't.
Here.
There it is.
This is a copy of Dr. Seaman's book that we've been perusing through and pulling out some good insights from, and we were hoping we could get your permission to include in the blog entry that we post about this table that you place in several places in the especially in the introductory chapters that talks about contrasting pro-inflammatory foods versus deflaming foods.
Sure.
So if you could first give us just a 1-minute rundown on why are you an expert on this topic? Why do we have you on HealingYourself.Life talking about inflammation and how that's related to diet?
Well, first, if you really get into any area of study, you're hard pressed to call yourself an expert unless you haven't dived too deeply into it. So, and that's not just being like modest or anything. It's really the depths of it, is shocking. Actually, they're like levels that you can go through. So I started looking at this 30 years ago. I was sitting in a post-grad class after I graduated from a chiropractic college, actually in 1986, and I was sitting there in 1987. And the presenter was a medical doctor from Great Britain, and he talked about the various chemicals that activate pain fibers. They're properly called nociceptive fibers. And he listed all the chemicals, and I thought to myself, wow, all those look like chemicals that the diet influences. So I went back to my office and then came in, the next day. I brought my book, one of my nutrition books, and I asked him, do you think that diet might influence this? Because you mentioned prostaglandins. Now, prostaglandins are short-lived tissue hormones that create pain if you produce too many of the wrong kind, but they promote healing if you have the proper balance. So I showed him this chapter that talked about omega-3. You probably heard of omega-3 fatty acids, fish oil, EPA, DHA, yeah. And so he was drinking a Coke at that point, and so I was not going to bank on or totally take what he said to heart. And he goes, might be possible. So that was 1987, and I started studying it at that point. And by the time I wrote my paper in 2002, it was called The Diet-Induced Pro-Inflammatory State. That was the first review article ever published on that in the scientific literature. And the reason why is because it just the connections hadn't been made yet. We knew about herbs and spices and fish oil, but it wasn't described in the context of diet induction. So I went to the library and I started collecting papers. Now, of course, we have PDFs, we have computers, but back then it was just paper copies. So I have about 10,000 paper copies of articles that I kept just because, that's what you do when you collect stuff. So I've been looking at it for 30-some years now. And medicine is slow to look at it. Physical therapy is slow to look at it. Chiropractic is slow to look at it because people focus on their treatment interventions as opposed to the lifestyle factors that induce the inflammatory state. So that's why I guess you could say I'm worth listening to.
Yeah,
Right.
Something you just said rang so true for me. I had, and some of our viewers know this and they'll learn more about it later, but had a almost lifelong struggle with inflammatory bowel disease, specifically Crohn's disease, from when I was 13 years old, getting extreme pain, premature satiety, getting full too soon when starting to eat, and getting a lot of nausea and vomiting, that sort of thing, and lost a lot of weight, and just struggled years after years with different doctors. And one of the things that dismayed me the most was when talking with doctors that their apparent lack of knowledge about basic fundamental nutrition. Right. And then one time, somebody told me, go ask your doctor to be referred to a nutritionist. So I got referred to a nutritionist, and it was even more discouraging because I knew more about the stuff than the so-called nutritionist. I mean, first of all, I have to say this person didn't have ordinary body dimensions, and it was like, well, wait a minute, I'm going to be getting advice from you, and then the advice that I got, I knew better than what I was being told. So it was, I really can relate to sort of that poverty of lack of guidance, lack of information, and frankly, I think lack of formation and education that our system cranks out these expert and very expensive caregivers that we hold up as the height of wellness care, but they really aren't qualified in this vital area, what we're bringing to it by what we eat.
Well, and that was, I guess, the other thing was when we were having our 4th and 5th children, we decided to have them at home. We knew the lay midwives were very much on, you need proper nutrition to have a proper home birth, too. So we've been into this for quite a while now of finding good, healthy food and herbs and stuff, but we still need help because we've been struggling with Lyme and Candida is the other thing. And so this is a great book because I think we're both having some inflammation issues. True. So this,
if we were wondering if you could talk to us first about what inflammation fundamentally is. I mean, what is inflammation? We were talking about how, well, sometimes your body does things that are so wise, even though, like if you
feel pain, it prevents you from getting burned. You pull your hand away, so it's good. We have those things, but it does. Inflammation doesn't seem like a good thing. So why would the body do it? At least it's not
obvious. There's some things that seem like if you sprain your ankle, it'll swell up, and it's like, well, that's maybe your body's trying to make a splint there to immobilize it or protect you from whatever. But is inflammation actually a intentional response on the part of your body, or is it something that's always undesirable? Because so many diseases we've heard are inflammatory in nature. So can you first just talk to us about what inflammation actually is?
Sure. What you're describing actually is what confused when this information about lifestyle-induced inflammation came out. I would say within the last 10 years, it confused practitioners of all varieties because everyone is taught acute inflammation, like the sprained ankle that you talked about.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
So you hurt yourself and you swell up. That's part of the healing process.
Okay.
But now think about what happens after you sprain your ankle. It swells up, it heals, and then swelling goes away.
Right.
Well, even if you didn't sleep well for, say, you travel and you don't sleep well for 3 or 4 days, you're getting 4 hours a night sleep as opposed to your customary 7 or 8.
Yeah.
Right.
Within 4 days, not sleeping turns on inflammation.
Uh-huh.
So, it gets really, and stressing out about stuff turns on inflammation as well. Bad news that depresses you or distresses you turns on inflammation. So there's huge varying degrees between the acute kind from injury and the chronic kind from lifestyle. Now, the thing that happens is that the same cells, whether they're immune cells or blood vessel wall cells or even the cells of the pancreas that produce insulin, they also secrete inflammatory chemistry, just like immune cells, when they're exposed to a big blast of glucose, as in what I call it a drive-by self-shooting.
Oh,
right?
No.
Yeah. So you do a drive-by, to wherever it is. Let's just say you decide to do a drive-by to the donut shop.
Oh, yeah.
And you get 6 donuts and a cup of coffee, and everyone says, oh, the coffee is not good for you. And really, it's really kind of funny. Years ago, they thought that coffee wasn't good for you. Coffee is actually quite anti-inflammatory.
Yes, that's what I heard, yeah.
Yeah, so you get the drive-by event with the hyperglycemia, the high blood sugar from the 6 donuts, and then your pancreas is exposed to that, and the cells that produce insulin, but also produce inflammatory chemistry as if the pancreas cells had been sprained.
Aha. Okay.
And blood vessel wall cells, like say, for example, all the sugar circulating around your body in areas of turbulence, they're always under stress there. Blood vessel wall cells produce inflammatory chemistry. You start to move, and if you are flamed up inappropriately, even your connective tissue, your healing cells in your joints produce inflammatory chemistry. So the best way to look at this is think about the sprain event where you hurt yourself, obviously, and then think about a drive-by self-shooting event where you just bloat up on sugar, flour, and refined oils, and you have an inflammatory reaction. The same kind, only less acute, less robust. So you don't swell. Like after you do 6 donuts, you just kind of feel good, like you want some more, right?
Maybe not after 6.
Yeah.
Well, unless you have a bad gut. When people are young and they don't have conditions like, say, the Crohn's disease or irritable bowel syndrome, they just will have chicken fingers and fries and a donut, and it's like, man, I want some more. That was so good.
Right.
No, people do not feel the flame when they're young and not already flamed up. So we have this illusion that it's actually not a big deal because we don't feel anything. Like when you sprain your ankle, you know it.
Yeah, right.
But when you sprain your pancreas, you don't know it. So there's inflammatory chemicals. So they're called, there are lots of weird roads in different cities, and people learn new roads. So let's just do a biochemical road. One is called prostaglandins, and one is called cytokines. And so when you produce too many pro-inflammatory prostaglandins and cytokines, the flame goes on. You do a drive-by self-shooting, you stress out about something, you don't sleep, you just tick up the cytokines compared to when you sprain your ankle and have a robust release. So it's the same inflammatory chemistry, just less robust.
Okay. Very interesting.
And chronic in nature. You're saying that if it just keeps building and building and building and building, it isn't a big flare and a release that actually accomplishes anything. I mean, in the case of, I guess you call it healthy inflammatory response, what would be the purpose of that? What is the purpose of that when the body does it sort of suddenly and robustly?
It initiates healing.
Like how?
Oh, okay.
Like, does it trigger something to do something different or something?
Yeah, it initiates healing. So the inflammatory process initiates healing, and then after the acute phase is done, the healing cells, the repair tissue is laid down.
Okay.
Is it kind of like a big alarm that causes all of the ambulances to come out kind of thing? Is it a signal to the body that, hey, there's a problem over here?
Exactly. And then the ambulances are supposed to go back into the house.
Okay.
Okay.
But the problem is when you're not sleeping, stressing, not exercising, eating, doing drive-by self-shootings, you get 2 or 3 ambulances that never go back in. Compared to, like, say you have 10 or 20 show up to, and police cars and fire trucks and ambulances roll out. You just have a couple, so you don't know that they're there until time goes by. And you start, I don't really feel like as well as I did 10 years ago, and I start to get aches and pains that I didn't injure myself. I just start to hurt. Right. And that's because of all those ambulances that never went back into the garage.
So then you're stuck with chronic fatigue and also maybe a chronic inflammation because you're not feeding your body the way it needs to be fed to eliminate the ambulances, as you say. Is that correct?
Yeah. Okay. But the way to look at it, though, is the chronic inflammation is chronic fatigue in certain people.
Right. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So chronic inflammation, without it, is hard, unless you have a really outlier condition not worth even talking about. Without chronic inflammation, you don't get sick. Now, you're going to die, of course, because the system wears out. But you should be able to live to 90 or 100 and then just, go to sleep and off you go. shouldn't be burdened throughout one's decades and decades of suffering. Yeah. So they actually call
illness. Okay.
Yeah,
so
chronic illness.
What are some things that we can do to deflame our diet so that we do feel healthy? Because I think so many people, we look at it and we go, well, I'm just getting older, so my neck hurts a little more, and I'm not digesting my food as well, and I have these aches and pains because I'm older, or I'm forgetting more because I'm older. So what can we do to kind of restore our health and get back to feeling better and feeling, I guess you'd say, younger?
Yeah. In actual fact, researchers, and I didn't coin this term, but a researcher over in Italy coined the term inflammaging.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. So the idea is to anti-inflammage, because we're going to go at some point,
right,
as opposed to pro-inflammage.
Yeah.
And so first thing, the average person who is stuck in the hustle and bustle of life, when they listen to people talk about nutrition and say you got to give up all this stuff, you have to just drink vegetable juice and organic this, and you can't shop there, you can't do this, and all these things freak people out.
Right.
And when they hear all that stuff that burdens their mind, they actually have an inflammatory reaction.
Yeah, exactly.
Just out of the
got
stress.
all stressed out. Exactly.
Yeah.
We got to take a minute to interject there that after we got a year's worth of antibiotic treatment for our Lyme disease, which I, by the way, gave my lovely wife here. I got it from a tick, and she got it from her husband.
Oh.
But anyway,
it's been
the antibiotics really just wiped out our digestive system.
Yeah, really
and
bad.
That in trying to recover from that, we were really trying, because of Candida overgrowth, we were needing to, and still are, really trying to take baby steps to get out of the woods nutritionally. And
it was in the woods that you got trouble. Now we're trying to get out of them.
Yeah, that's true, literally. And but just the restrictions. I mean, we were kind of nuts about this, and people maybe can relate to this. Please have a laugh at our expense. But everybody who's watching this is that if one research you can do online is good, then maybe 10 are better. And if you compare all these lists of things you shouldn't eat, and then you combine them all together, then you probably have the really good list. And we were at the store trying to buy some food, and you just walk through it, and it was like a desert. There's nothing. Everything we knew, can't have that, can't have that, can't have that, can't have that. Finally, I said, well, what am I supposed to do? And she said, you need to provide something for supper here, and I can tell you just anything you can get as long as it's not food. So yeah, we were just desperate.
That was the joke. You can eat anything that's not food.
So it can be overwhelming. It really is distressing.
Really can
you
be,
feel like what am I supposed to survive on?
And admittedly, I mean, your diet is not going to be that way, but the Candida diet is pretty severe, especially your first stages. You really can't eat much of anything for real.
And to make it worse, frankly, if you're coming off of being accustomed to binging or just
sure, I would love my sweets. That was my big downfall. Yeah,
you feel that withdrawal. You feel that deprivation.
Yeah.
It really hits you hard. You feel like I'm gonna wither away. So anyway, sorry, that was a big interruption.
Maybe that's a good question. How do we eat without feeling that deprivation? For me, it was my M&Ms or whatever. Yeah. So I had to give those all up, obviously. Right. So how do you maybe substitute something and make something that's obviously healthier and will help you deflame and get the inflammation down out of your body, but feel kind of comforting at the same time.
Fulfilled.
Is there a way to do that?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. So I would say that your scenario would be an outlier situation because it's unique. A year's worth of antibiotics and the Lyme disease coupled with the Crohn's disease. Right. So for the average person, I ran into someone earlier, about a year ago, I guess, and he was a burger and fries guy and soda.
Mm-hmm. That sounds good.
Man.
Yeah, right?
Jeez.
Right? Yeah, I mean, standard guy. Yeah. And he finds out that he's I think he was 40 years old, and he's like 240, and he's got diabetes now.
Yes. Right.
And he goes, well, this is terrible. What should I do? And so he thought to himself, I'll go online. I found some stuff. And he goes, I'm just going to eat 600 calories per day.
Ooh, okay.
and get back to my college weight. Right?
Yeah.
So here were his calories. 400 calories was a cheeseburger from, I think, a fast food restaurant. I'm not going to name them, of course, but you can just imagine.
So
and it made a double cheeseburger.
At all. Okay.
Made a double cheeseburger, actually.
Okay.
But it was a 400 calorie cheeseburger. Okay, with the bun, with the white flour that people malign. Oh my God, the GMOs, you're going to die, and then
White flour,
and the red meat that's going to kill you, and this GMO eating like soybean or corn or whatever, and you can't do that because you're going to die. And the cheese, oh my God, it's fake cheese, you're going to die. All the dramatists. So he ate that every day for 2 months. And he had 200 calories where he ate vegetables otherwise.
Okay. Well, that's pretty good.
That's a lot of vegetables.
Right. And in 2 months, he lost 40 or 50 pounds and his diabetes was gone. The lion's share of his calories was a double cheeseburger.
Okay.
Wow, interesting. Okay. Huh, that's fair.
So that wouldn't work for you too.
No, not yet.
Right? That wouldn't work for you too. But the average person, the most important thing for the average person is to just eat less calories.
Okay.
They can literally eat the same crap that they're eating.
Uh-huh.
Just learn to restrain calories.
Okay.
And then get a tape measure out.
Yeah.
Now, chapter 9 of my book lists all the different inflammatory markers. So you take out a tape measure, and by yourself in the privacy of your own wherever, where no one's looking, you got to just get down to your skivvies, take out a tape measure, and measure your waist around the belly button area.
Okay.
Now, for some people, the widest spot is the belly button. Others a little bit below. Others a little bit above. You got to go to the widest spot.
Okay.
And then you measure what that is. And then you compare what that was when you were, say, for women, basically 17 to 22 typically is normal weight for women. And for men, 18, 20 to 25.
Okay.
So we want to be what we were when we were basically in college. That's our weight, unless we put on muscle mass.
Okay,
right.
That's kind of crazy when we were doing good workouts and building muscle mass, and they were telling doctors
you're going to gain weight because you have muscle, not fat. So
yeah. So if you have more muscle, well, then you're going to weigh more than you did when you were, say, 22.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. But anyway, that's what you do. You just eat the same crap you're eating. I call it a dietary crackhead. I mean, if you're a hardcore dietary crackhead and you cannot give up, all the drive-by shootings and the M&Ms and whatever else, you just cut back the calories so that you go back 500 calories or more less per day, and then you just shred the weight off and get back to where you were. And as you feel better, introduce more healthy food, or you can go cold turkey. Mm-hmm. And so what cold turkey means is no sugar, no flour, no refined oil.
That's what we did.
Yeah.
We had to.
Yeah.
So
well, you guys would have to because of your outlier condition.
Okay.
The average person doesn't need to do that unless they really want to go for it. Because again, I mean, imagine you can reverse diabetes with double cheeseburger.
That's amazing. Yes, right. But
it's
along
about
that,
calories.
Yeah, and then he was probably increasing vegetables, as you said. So that compensated. It sounds like.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, the other thing too is that someone, I say double cheeseburgers, then someone could write in the comments like, "Wow," and they go all crazy, but they don't understand calories because there's been this uptick in information about a calories, not a calorie kind of thing, which is true if you're eating calories at basically your caloric need level. Sugar, flour, calories at your caloric need tends to put you into a less of a fat burning state.
Right.
But if you're eating 500 to 1,000 calories less than you need, it doesn't make any difference.
Aha.
And one of the videos on my DeFlame Nutrition YouTube channel, I talk about losing weight, eating Twinkies, and getting the diabetes, eating double cheeseburgers.
Okay.
So there was a professor, I think it was a university in Kansas or Kentucky, and he decided to just eat 1,800. He found out that he needed about 2,500 calories per day to maintain. He's probably mid-30s guy, and so he just ate basically Hostess desserts for a month. And lost weight. And I'm not saying do that,
no,
right?
Of course not. No.
You're just pointing out. Yeah.
That is possible to do that and lose weight.
because calories are the most important thing for the average person. And people say, I got to count calories. Well, so what? Big deal. Count some calories.
Yeah.
And get back to what you were when you were 22, 25, 20, whatever it was when you were perfecto.
And it's probably it's so easy nowadays because if you are going to be eating things with labels on them, they all have the calories.
Yeah, it's easier to
and
find
the fat.
than it used to.
Yeah.
But we've heard a different take on this where some people have even gone as far as to say calories don't matter because if you eat, you can eat unlimited amounts of lean, wild caught fish and meats and vegetables and
as long as you keep out the
want.
starches.
But you keep out the carbs and you'll be okay.
I would ignore those people. And one of the ways to find out if someone is actually worth listening to, there's a website called pubmed.gov. pubmed.gov. And what you can do is you can put the person. So if you were to take my name, Seaman, and put my first initial D, my second initial R into the search field and click go, about 20-some papers will appear. So these are the papers that scientists read and use, and this is how scientists check for information and publish their work. And so if someone is saying this, you can just say, you just eat as much as you want, and I bet they've never published a paper ever. They're just talking. And they probably applied it to themselves where, how many avocados, if I was to say, okay, we're going to eat avocados right now for dinner, and have you ever taken an avocado, you slice it open, you just ate the whole thing?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, they're wonderful.
Okay.
Yeah, they're great.
Okay. So are they okay for you too with both of your conditions?
Yeah, we can eat avocado at this point.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if we were just to eat an avocado, I mean, how many avocados could you eat before you're like, I'm kind of done with the avocado?
Yeah, no, they're very rich,
they're very rich,
very filling.
Yeah, very.
So how many are you going to eat?
One avocado I feel about right.
Yeah, one, right?
Probably one, yeah.
What if I force 3 down your throat?
Oh, no, forget that.
I'd say no, thank you.
Okay. So an avocado has about 250 calories. So how many pounds of fish could you eat? If I gave you a big pound or half pound or a pound of salmon and an avocado, you're like, I'm full.
Yes,
right.
You can't eat any more.
Right.
So if you decide to do, like popular now is become popularized, the ketogenic diet people talk about, right?
Yes.
Oh, you can just eat all the fat you want. You can just suck on butter like as a popsicle. No, you can't. So you could not just eat full fat cream and butter and do 5,000 calories per day. You will get diabetes, cancer, and heart disease from eating fat.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Humans cannot exceed their caloric needs for a long period of time and not become sick. Eating beyond our caloric needs leads to inflammation no matter what the calorie source is. If it was farmed or caught wild in the purest waters of northern Alaska, and you found vegetation and and you ate 5,000 calories per day, you're dead. Just like if you're eating excess calories from donuts.
Wow.
Yeah.
I had not heard that. This is new.
Important. Yeah.
Very new, because it does. I think we are hearing more and more about the ketogenic diet, and because of what we had to do is to eliminate carbs and things like that. And people often say, "Well, that's the healthy thing to do these days." Now we're able to get a few more carbs like rice and things like that in back into the diet, and potatoes again, which were a no-no a while ago. But so that's very interesting. I hadn't heard that perspective, so I'm definitely great to be learning something new here. That's awesome.
Oh, good.
So I guess we should probably go right to the heart of the matter then on the DeFlame diet. And again, that term DeFlame, can you hold that up?
Yeah, sure.
Is again one that is kind of a new term. Did you coin that term? Is it the opposite of inflame?
Well, I think that other people may have used the word before. I think maybe it's just it wasn't popularized. So I started talking about it 15 years ago. For all practical purposes, yes. I would talk about inflaming, and I would say anti-inflammatory. I'm like, that's like how many syllables? Anti-inflammatory. Give me a break.
Right.
I'm like, inflame, deflame.
Okay.
And so essentially, yes, coined it. Website, business, book.
So the idea is there are specific food choices that will. You mentioned other things like stress and worry and bad news and overwhelmness or different things, lack of sleep, so on. You didn't mention, I didn't hear at least exercise or lack thereof. Maybe you can talk to us about that, is that related? But also, are there specific foods that trigger or signal your body or tend to lead to the DeFlame response rather than the inflammatory response.
Yeah, that's good.
I did mention briefly exercise, and sedentary living is a big problem.
Okay.
Yeah. There is one researcher, his name is Frank Booth. He calls not exercising the sedentary death syndrome.
Yes, right.
Yeah, because not moving turns the flame on. Our body is supposed to move. Yeah.
And you just feel better moving. I mean,
oh, absolutely.
When we've been missing walks. It's actually our dog. We have a big, huge dog that gets us out walking because
he's our
so
personal
active.
trainer.
Yeah, we call him our personal trainer. But he injured his leg, so we haven't been walking as far and as much. And I can feel it. It's like you don't feel as healthy, and you feel like I need that walk. My body needs it. Yeah. So maybe that is another thing that is causing some more inflammation. Even though our diet is still good, I still feel like I'm not back to full health here. So that's very interesting, yeah.
Well, moving actually causes the body to release anti-inflammatory chemicals.
Okay.
Yeah. You have these pro-inflammatory cytokines, anti-inflammatory cytokines. And so an anti-inflammatory, the most well-known is called interleukin 10. You might as well just say what it is. It's interleukin 10. And vitamin D causes the body to turn on interleukin 10. What's become popular now, the CBD oil.
Yes.
Yep.
So CBD causes the body to turn on interleukin 10. Okay. Exercise causes you to turn on interleukin 10. So movement is really, really important, and it should be at the level of tolerance for the individual, which can be different from person to person. Yeah. So you don't feel beat up after you do it. You're not like needing to take a nap, or you feel the following day you have all that delayed onset muscle soreness type of stuff. So people need to exercise to tolerance, whatever that might be, and it can vary. Yeah. And then when it comes to foods, if you eat a couple of donuts, but you're eating less calories than you would otherwise eat, you're not going to have the caloric drive for inflammation. But you still have an inflammatory reaction to all that sugar.
Yeah, I was going to just ask that. Right.
Yeah. But the body's anti-inflammatory response to caloric deprivation is so powerful, which is why I wanted to spend so much time on that, because caloric deprivation is the only way that researchers have shown that you can really extend life in lab animals, caloric deprivation.
Okay.
So that being said, the average person is not going to do that, right?
Right.
So the most anti-inflammatory foods there are, let's just take a trip down to to Polynesia. We'll go to New Guinea, I think a little further in the South Seas.
Okay.
And we'll go to Catawba, an island in New Guinea, and there they eat sweet potatoes, yams, taro root, and fruit as their primary calories.
Okay.
No one's overweight, and they all basically, unless they fall off a cliff or get injured, they don't wear shoes, so you run around barefooted for 90 years.
Wow.
Unless you get injured. So they die from traumatic injury or infections from injuries. Otherwise, living on fruit and potatoes, they live to be 90 to 100.
It
wow,
sounds
that's
like
amazing.
Low protein and kind of, so there's some carbs in there too. So.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. But again, they don't overeat, and they're always active. They eat fish. They have chickens running around, so they eat eggs.
Okay.
But my point though is that depending upon what you like, and you're and if you hate green vegetables, well, what are you going to do? Well, I can't eat green vegetables. I have to eat donuts. No. There are options. Yeah. I hate green vegetables, so I'll eat different colored vegetables.
Yeah.
I'll get carrots and beets and radicchio and colored peppers, and those would be my vegetables. Mm-hmm. And then I'll get sweet potatoes and whatever fruits someone might like, and then they're deflaming then as well. So as long as it's vegetation, the flame goes off.
You know, and it's really interesting you mentioned about people not liking different vegetables. Our oldest daughter she's a fabulous cook. I mean, she's awesome. And she says she'll make, her in-laws didn't like, I think it was Brussels sprouts. She said, "You haven't had Brussels sprouts the way I make them." And she grilled them and she did this wonderful thing. And yeah, they taste terrific, you know, and And she'll do beets because sometimes there's that rooty flavor, so she'll roast them. And so there's a lot of clever ways of, I think, dealing with food that we may not like, but if we cook them in a proper fashion, we actually will realize we do like them.
If your exposure to vegetables has either been canned vegetables or at the
boiling,
at the
kind of the boring
school cafeteria or boiled, you really haven't. If you haven't had vegetables fresh out of the garden or roasted or grilled, you haven't had them.
Yeah. So that's just my thought on that. Is you can, I think, your repertoire for people who are listening can grow as you learn to cook or juice. Some of the vegetables can be more palatable, I think.
Yeah, and then spicing, learning how to spice.
Yes. Oh gosh.
Yeah, like the ginger and turmeric. Well, turmeric is very peppery and spicy. Ginger is less peppery, and people can tolerate more spice as time goes by. And ginger and turmeric are probably, now here's what people do when they get onto this whole nutrition thing. It's going to help me. I got this disease. I'm going to treat it. Bad way to look at it. The idea is to deflame yourself, and then if you haven't moved too far into the chronic disease expression, you can reverse things to a large measure. But you can't sit there and not sleep, never go in the sun, never move, do drive-by self-shootings, and take ginger pills.
Yeah,
Exactly.
And that doesn't work. Yeah.
Well, something you just touched on, I think, is absolutely key, and it's if people are watching this is going to be a theme that's going to come through over and over and over again on HealingYourself.Life, and that is, rather than the so-called conventional medicine focus on like attacking the disease, rather than allowing the natural design of health and wellness to flourish and to emerge and to heal. So, in other words, we seem to think that like disease is this thing that came in from outside, and we've got to then use these horrible. I mean, all you got to do is listen to one of these drug ads on the TV, and they start listening to these terrible things that are going to happen if you take these drugs. But it's like, okay, well, that's what you got to do because that's what everybody says you got to do. I got to take this pill and it'll do it. But you're saying is no, our natural state, like the New Guinea Islanders or whatever, is well-being and health and wellness and flourishing, and it can by just adopting and cultivating the habits that allow that natural state to reemerge, the green grass will just flow over and choke out the weeds, so to speak, so that our life can become more pleasant and full of energy and vitality and that sort of thing. Not so much because we're attacking illness as because we're enabling our natural wellness to flourish.
A good way to look at that is actually diabetes that people develop, is type 2 diabetes that they develop typically as they age, although children in high school now have it because they're obese.
Right.
So people say, well, my father had it, my grandfather had it. I mean, Luke had the force, I got diabetes, and unfortunately it doesn't really work like that. Or fortunately it doesn't work like that. So if you overeat sugar and flour and refined oils and you're hypercaloric, overeating what you need to do, your pancreas, the insulin producing cells will produce inflammatory chemistry that will eventually lead to white blood cell entering into the pancreas, and you have a localized inflammatory reaction, and then the pancreas degenerates as a consequence of this inflammatory reaction. So you can't, diabetes is just a word. You can't treat a word. You can't treat a name. It's the state in the tissue that must be addressed.
Okay.
Like you can't, treat depression. You have to undepress yourself by deflaming one's brain, because inflammation, depression is also an inflammatory state. I mean, literally, depression is like diabetes of your brain. Now, people say, well, Alzheimer's chemistry is very, very similar in terms of the pathology, but in terms of the biochemistry, depression in the pancreas is diabetes, and diabetes in the brain can be Alzheimer's or depression, because it's the same inflammatory chemistry. It's identical. So the idea is, if we deflame, and again, when you ask about what specific things, green vegetables, spices, fruits, and what says, I can't eat fruit. Well, don't eat fruit. It's almost like why I don't really like saying you should do this, or you should eat this. Well, I don't like it, because whenever you tell someone to do something, they say, I don't like it, I can't do it.
Yes, right, exactly.
So someone could reverse many conditions by doing yogurt and blueberries. not saying to do that,
Yes.
right? Not saying to do that. The issue is sugar, flour, and refined oils.
Mm-hmm.
Those 3 calorie sources that are not foods make up almost 60% of the average American's calories.
Yeah,
Think about that.
I know you've talked about there's certain situations where...
Well, and that we have. When we want to go to the grocery store and you want to buy something that's convenient, and you look down there's sugar. There's sugar. There's sugar.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
everywhere.
Why are you putting sugar in tomato soup?
Everything,
I just want a can of tomato soup. And there's sugar. It's like,
Or when we've traveled and you get to the free breakfast that's at the hotel, and you look down, some of them have very extensive layouts, like 30 or 40 items there, and you look down there, it's like, it's almost all starch and sugar.
Yes.
That's what
you
it
can have the
is.
eggs and maybe some fruit.
Yeah.
It's shocking.
Yeah,
it's shocking.
It is. Our diet, the American diet has really become, you're right, starch and sugars, and it's no good.
So the main principles I've heard so far, and just trying to reflect this back to make sure I'm following, is try to put yourself, besides eliminating or reducing some of these triggers like overstress, under-rested, and not active enough. But then beyond that, calorie deficit, and then also shifting away from some of the flour, refined sugars, and unhealthy oils. So what are some healthy oil choices? Other than avocados that we already talked about?
Yeah, the healthy oil and fat choices freak people out because people have been told that saturated fats are going to kill you.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So the second you bring up that word, people have a meltdown. And they're convinced that it's going to kill them.
Right.
So I say, well, I'll ask people, well, name a saturated fat, and they'll go butter. No, butter has monounsaturated and polyunsaturated. I've got like 50 pages in my book on fats because people have lost their minds about fats.
We got set right on that when we had home births with lay midwives, and our lay midwife said, what do you guys use for fats in the kitchen? We started going on the list. She said,
margarine.
Throw the margarine out. We said, okay, we got corn oil. She said, get the corn oil out of there. So, okay, we got soy oil. Get the soybean oil out of there. What? She says, you can have butter. You can have natural, healthy butter, coconut oil. You can have a virgin olive oil and avocados.
Yeah.
That kind
there you go.
Yeah, really good.
You just named them. There you go.
Yeah. And you're right. Even like, I think the Heart Association came out recently about coconut oil, trying to really say, oh no, coconut oil is not very good for you, or
right, because it's a tropical oil, and that means it's bad. Yeah.
Oh yeah. You're gonna die. I know.
Yeah. No. We've heard good things about it. So yeah.
Well, I did a video called "Coconut Oil Fake News."
Oh, there you go. Oh, that's great. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yes. Yeah.
Even the Pritikin organization said olive oil is going to kill you.
Oh my gosh.
Because I don't. It's like brainwashing. When it comes to grains, people are grain-washed. It's just you're told something over and over and over again.
Oh, right. Again, the food pyramid, the 13 servings of grains that is the foundation of your food pyramid.
I know. Yeah. So those fats and oils are fine as long as we're talking about it in the context of proper caloric intake. And then, because again, remember that professor at Kansas or Kentucky normalized his cholesterol by eating donuts and other Hostess things because he was hypocaloric. Now, I'm not saying do that.
Right, of course.
Saying though that in the short term, the body responds in an amazingly anti-inflammatory fashion to caloric debt, caloric deficit.
So for someone, so obviously for females we need less calories. Do you have a typical range of how many calories we should strive for men and women, or does it really depend on? Obviously, it just depends on your height and that sort of thing. But I mean, in general. Nope.
It depends upon how active you are.
Oh, that's true too. Yeah, I hadn't taken that.
If I was to just put a number out there, the average guy typically not more than 2,000 a day, maybe 1,800, and the average woman 1,200 to 1,500.
Okay.
Which speaks to why it's good to move so you can eat more if you want.
Right.
Because calories add up quick.
Yes, right. And it sounds like this is very interesting, too, that you don't have to deprive yourself if you really do want your donut, as long as you either get a bunch of exercise that day and or you don't go above your calorie needs, your body will take care of that. Is that
now?
correct?
That's true, except for if someone has type 2 diabetes.
Oh yes, okay, yeah.
Or they have what's the precursor metabolic syndrome, and if they eat a donut and then 2 hours later their glucose is above 140, no donut for you.
Right.
A colleague of mine reversed his type 2 diabetes. I should describe him in, I think, chapter 2 or 3, how to eat anti-inflammatory, how to eat deflaming foods. He reversed his type 2 diabetes. He wasn't feeling well. He goes to get his blood work done. He also bought a glucometer. So he goes in, gets his blood drawn. He goes back to his car, and he checks his glucose level. It was at 300.
Oh, boy.
You want to be like below 100 for sure. Really, you want to be like close to 80 fasting glucose. He's at 300.
Yeah.
Full diabetes. Diabetes.
Yeah, definitely.
So his hemoglobin A1C was 11. You want to be like 6. You want to be as low as possible, below 6, really. So he's a full-blown diabetic, and he just goes into caloric deficit, eats only the anti-inflammatory foods that we've talked about, and he only had to lose like 25 pounds. And within 6 months, he did it kind of slow and piecemeal. Right. He went fasting 300 to fasting 110, and his hemoglobin A1C was normal in 6 months. So he reversed diabetes. Now for him, any fruit but berries popped up his glucose 2 hours after he consumed it.
Okay.
So there are limits, and that's why chapter 9 that talks about the inflammatory markers. It's not like just have a free-for-all, just eat donuts.
Right, of course, yeah.
But the reason why I bring that up is because the average dietary crackhead just wigs out when they're told, when they hear this restrictive stuff, you got to just do a water fast, and and that's it. I'm like, what? People will say, is fasting good? The average person can't stop eating. Is fasting good? Seriously, for that guy? No.
What about that experience? Okay, so we can talk about the virtues of fasting and what different types of fasting are beneficial or to what extent. But what about that experience of that people would report as self-deprivation, that feeling I'm supposedly supposed to stop eating the meal, but I'm not satiated. I'm still hungry. I don't want to feel hungry all the time. I certainly felt the opposite when we went on a cruise and they had 8 meals a day, and it was the most disorienting thing in the world to arrive at each meal not being hungry. It was unsatisfying. It was really
weird, right?
Yeah, very weird. Yeah,
it's like going to bed when you're not sleepy. It's just weird. It just didn't feel right at all. Or waking up when you're not rested.
So you talked about after eating and feeling your gut feels full, but you still feel hungry. That's very paradoxical. And that happens to people once they pursue and achieve the full flame. I mean, they got to be going for it. So now they're 40 pounds overweight. Their body is flaming away. You can do blood tests, and their triglycerides will be high, HDL will be low, glucose will be elevated, C-reactive protein will be elevated. I mean, the flame is on. That person whose flame is on, like, they're flaming everywhere. Mm-hmm. And some people who achieve that level of flame, their hypothalamus, which is upstairs in the brain, it no longer responds to the satiating signals of insulin and another hormone called leptin.
Okay.
So they have what's called insulin resistance and leptin resistance in the hypothalamus, and they can feel like food's going to explode through their umbilicus, but they still feel hungry.
Aha.
Because their hypothalamus is inflamed. Yeah.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, isn't that crazy?
Yeah, very crazy.
But
so you tell that person, just fast. Yeah, right.
Right. Yeah, they're not going to want to. Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Is fasting good? Yeah, not for you.
Yeah, so that can be very anxiety producing.
Yeah,
sure.
And I think there are different people where, I don't mind fasting, but somebody else. I have a friend. She goes, "I'll get too cranky," and she's quite slim. She doesn't have a weight issue, so much slimmer than me actually. And so, for her, not only does she not need to, but it's not. She just gets too cranky around the people that she loves, so she doesn't want to do it, which makes sense. Maybe you've got to decide.
You've talked about the sense of deprivation that people have, anticipating that when told, I either have to eat something I
don't want to,
or I got to stop eating something I like. But what about that part that you're talking about, the behavior or what would you call it? Not mood altering, but it's when people get so cranky.
I think the low blood sugar, because I did have gestational diabetes, and if my blood sugar would go really down, and my dad has diabetes, And if his blood sugar goes down, it's like, I got to have food. And you get really cranky. I guess it's the hypoglycemia. And panicky feeling, yeah.
But you won't believe it. Sometimes there's that lack of objectivity. And finally, people around you, your roommate or your partner or whatever,
really cranky.
Goes, here, eat this. Don't talk, just eat.
Yeah.
What do you do when people, is it a transitional, you got to get over that, you got to get through that? Is that just kind of part of the detoxing or the getting out of the bad habit and getting in the new habit, and eventually that won't happen as much when you're in that calorie deficit?
The average person doesn't have low blood sugar. If you're talking about diabetes, you always have high blood sugar.
Okay.
It's just that your hormonal system is not operating properly, and your brain, the brain its satiation system is not working properly. You actually have a hormone that's called orexin, and orexin, like anorexia, like right now I don't think I'm hungry. Am I? So I'm anorexic right now.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
So my orexin is not being activated. My orexin is turned off. So when someone goes in that, well, that's why I suggest just avoiding caloric deprivation for people who have behavioral eating disorders. Okay. And their time clock is like, I eat. Those people, they need to still, I think, eat in the same fashion. Like it depends. The average, like you two, you're both smart, and you could be mindful and just observe the reaction that's taking place in your body. Perhaps drink a quart of water and work yourself through it, and then before you know it, you're over it.
Right.
That happens to mindful people. When you're just a dietary crackhead, I mean, your brain, they literally have shown that people who are obese, their reward centers, their pleasure centers in their brain are primed. So when they just look at appetizing food,
yeah, they'll feel hungry.
Yeah, they just need to realize the experience, because they literally are. Now, they're not addicted in the sense of traditional addiction, but the reward centers are turned on such that they're propelled to experience the reward.
Okay.
They're not sleeping, so they don't feel well. They're stressed out, so they don't feel well. They're not exercising, so they're not getting any hedonic responses that way, reward responses that way. And they're looking for reward, and so they get reward by having something tasty.
Right.
And the average person who's sitting there going, my blood sugar is this or that, well, you can give them a donut and they're going to feel better. Or because it's not a blood sugar thing in general, it's more just like a reward thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you give that person, like, say, some broccoli, they probably, that didn't do it for me.
Right, exactly.
I need my whatever, my comfort food.
Yes, right.
Yeah, so it's more of a mental issue. Yeah. It's really more. Yeah, eating is really a mental deal, psychological mental deal that the average person does not understand, because they've been so conditioned and driven to eat, and everyone's always eating and drinking, and they've never sat back and watched their body during the whole eating and not eating process and thinking about, like, should I or should I not eat it? So they're just driven by behavioral responses, literally. I mean, think about it like this. Let's just say, so the three of us are normal weight. If all of a sudden the famine comes, the big one comes, right? We can't eat. Who's dying first, the three of us or the fat people? They're going to live longer.
Yeah, right.
If you're obese,
you're
going to live longer on your own fat. If you're thin, you're going to die. Yeah. So there's this natural built-in drive to eat. And your body actually protects its weight. It's called defending the body weight. Your brain actually defends whatever weight you're on. No matter what weight you're at, your body will defend it powerfully and make you want to eat. So someone who's overweight eats less calories, their brain wants them back to that body weight or higher.
I see.
For survival purposes.
Okay.
So it's really
starvation.
like a logic thing, a primordial thing, rather than I got low blood sugar.
Okay.
So what are some baby steps? Maybe what we're going to have to do, because our talk has gone on this long, it's been fascinating, and we've just scratched the surface. I think what we're going to have to do is probably schedule another time to come back, because I really would like to give you the opportunity. You've hinted at a number of different principles, but if you could kind of walk us through for people who experience this difficulty or that difficulty or that difficulty, here's some strategies and ways to kind of make it through that. And you've addressed some of those, but it would be really helpful if we could have you back on and kind of give us, we've talked about the problem side of the equation, and now I think we need to talk a little bit more about the solution side in ways that can be really actionable for people. And it's been fascinating. I think you've opened up a lot of questions that might jar with some of the more popular titles that have been out there and on the covers of magazines or whatever, but that's good to have a stimulating discussion around that, and by exploring these things, you're really bringing out issues that people can understand more. Did you have anything to add before we...
No, other than obviously the book, the DeFlame Diet, I think would be a great book to get, so that you can even, because we won't be able to obviously do the whole book on video, so it's a great book to get. And I think you can learn a lot. I feel like I'm learning a lot. So
when people want to find out more about your work, Dr. Seaman, where can they find you online?
DeFlame.com, DeFlame Nutrition YouTube channel, DeFlame Nutrition Facebook.
Great.
So
Okay.
we've been talking with David R. Seaman. He's a doctor of chiropractic and a master's of science in nutrition, and he's been here with us on HealingYourself.Life. He's coming back because we got to talk about. We can't leave us here because we got a donut in one hand and a glass of water in the other hand. We got to get beyond that. So thank you, Dr. Seaman, for this first episode here with us, and we'd love to have you back and give us some more pointers for all of our viewers' benefits.
Be happy to, and thanks for having me.